the Pauper Players Podcast. Let's go ahead and get the obvious out of the way. Birdman, not available to join us this week. Not because he did not try. Burb and I spoke for 2.5 hours on Sunday following the challenge. Not a minute of that is usable. Unfortunately, mistakes were made, and they were all made by myself. I have a brand new microphone with some brand new software, and unfortunately I had developed a few habits with the previous recording setup. Long story short, the audio file is unlistenable. Birdman, officially on a break from Magic the Gathering because of Pauper. And while that interview would have lent some insight, it's, again, unavailable. We do have on tap Paulo Cabral, fresh off back-to-back top 8s of the challenge with the very innovative tribe list. He did already do one interview with the Pop It Like It's Hot crew, but I want to dig deeper. I want to dig just a little bit deeper and learn more about Tribe, more about Paulo, and more importantly, about the Pauper scene in Brazil. So, sit back and enjoy. Hey, Paulo, thanks for coming on the pod, man. And for, our listeners out there, why don't you go ahead and just give them a little bit of a background about yourself?
Hello, guys. For those that don't know me, I am a Pauper player, MTGO grinder. Actually, for the last two years, only MTGO grinder. But I was a paper player here in Brazil. And I started playing in 2001 here in Brazil in the school. So a few years later, I become a cards dealer.
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting. And you sort of already did, in a way, explain a little bit about your history of your game. But, how did you start playing Magic in the first place?
I started playing when I was 15 years old. My cousin brought 2 decks and teached me to play it. A few months later, I started playing in my school. It was nice. On the first month, I traded all my good cards for trash cards. And that was how I began. A few months later, I learned the price of the cards and started to dealing the cards because I was mad with the guys that got my cards cheap and traded them for trash. Then I became too good on dealing cards. I used to go to the places where those guys couldn't go because their parents didn't let them go there. And I just use it to buy the cards cheaper and sell to them a little bit more expensive. And this is how I started. The extra money was the thing that got my attention in the beginning. Right after the illustrations, because the art on MTG is just nice. Yeah, I did almost that on the beginning. A few months later, I had 4 Flooded Strand, 4 Exalted Angel, almost 4 of each staple on the standard, and started playing. My first tournament was extended on the time. I just had this new crew I was playing with because I had a real good collection, and they loaned me the alluring deck. I didn't had any idea how it played or how never had played the deck before, and they handed it to me to play the event. My first sanctioned event was extended. Never played the extended before. There was Tinker and some other monster decks at the time, and I did well. I believe I made 3-2 on the event. The guys were surprised because I was beating everybody with a deck that I never played before and didn't even had any idea on how to combo. This was a very fun time. The judge that sanctioned my first event and made my DCI actually died last year. He was a very nice guy. A few months later, Magic got banned from my school because my colleagues were no longer buying snacks to buy cards from me. They just banned Magic from the school. I had to sell my cards on the entry. By this time, I was selling over $100 a day in the school, so it made me really interested in the game. The financial part on it just got me hooked. This was actually the second reason I played. The first one was the card illustrations, especially the lands. I always liked to draw and paint, and this is very interesting in Magic. The illustrations are really amazing.
Okay. Now, what's got you into Pauper, and what made you stick with Pauper?
When Pauper started, I was playing online, so I used it to play during the week and sell cards in the weekends. That was how I paid the rent and some other things. Online I had only standard decks and Momir, but I didn't have the most expensive decks, but I had good decks on standard. I believe I had Magnivore on the time and was making some money with it. So Pauper started. I decided to invest the profits from standard decks and the other formats I played in Pauper. I believe in 3 or 4 months, I just stopped playing standard and dedicated to Pauper and Momir because it was more profitable to me. And I believe this year I started, I was top 2 on the specialty in this year, but they didn't have any prize for it, so it's just a nice thing to mention. And that's how I started. My first deck was Affinity, and I believe 2 or 3 months later, I already had the entire format on my collection. I stayed with Pauper because of the price, basically, and the cards do not rotate out. This is nothing if you don't have much money to play the game. And in the beginning, I had some help from friends who loaned me some cards on the standard decks. This made me go through it. Standard, on the time, I was doing very well on the stores, on paper also. I believe I made some... I won some events with standard decks on the time. Pauper, when it started online, I just went through it. Almost every day I played the format.
So you recently did another interview with the Pop It Like It's Hot guys, and one of the more interesting subjects in that video was the Fishelbrand deck that was, very popular on Reddit, on YouTube, from Caleb, and you mentioned that you guys were trying to make that more of a thing. Are you guys still working on that?
The list uses a cure of blood and weather the storm to act like creep shot. And that's a 2 cards combo. If you can draw your library entirely or most of it. And I like this. It's a way to have creep shot targeting your opponent, and that doesn't lose to prismatic strands. That is pretty common right now on Pauper. And the only issue is you have to protect your combo from removal, because one removal and you will a lot of life, but you lose the game. And I think one list with maybe 2 or 3 disrupts to make sure you can do the combo is a good way to go. And the old Storm had a pretty good card draws quantity, so this is a way to go. I didn't play it yet, and I don't remember the guy that played that list, but I saw a picture of it in a WhatsApp group. Someone was commenting on it, but seeing the list, I just thought it was bad, but it's actually a better idea than try to make Gourmag and combo from that. There is a pretty good quantity of card draws in Pauper. I will try to make this deck work again, but in some time. Right now I'm dedicated to try. Caleb actually used a cure of blood against auras on the sideboard of the Gourmag Storm. Maybe the sideboard is a better plan than the main board. This is something I think maybe is a good way to go. The other thing I like the old Storm is that you don't have too many cards that deal damage to you. Those new builds use too many cards that suicide, and maybe playing less of them is a good idea. Maybe cutting the black guy that cycles is a good idea. Makes the deck probably more reliable. Trying to use more chromatic stars and spheres, maybe another option. You don't need to make the combo on turn 2 or 3. You need to put artifacts in play to store cards to draw when you are making the combo. That's a good way to go, I think. The old Storm used this strategy. That's very good. Against control, you just keep playing your eggs and assembling the combo. This is maybe a way to win some matches. And the deck generates a lot of mana, and paying 1 to draw one card and filter that mana while you are combo is not a problem. I will definitely go back to that list.
So the philosophy of this podcast is to speak with the people who are shaping the metagame, and you're constantly helping to do that whether directly or, through the big WhatsApp groups that you have going down in Brazil where, all the grinders talk and everything. So you definitely have your finger on the pulse, and we're definitely going to hear more from you before the 100 episodes of this podcast are through. Every time you come on, I would really like to have something called Paulo's Picks, where you talk about what you're speculating on, because I know that, you like to invest in cards and you like to speculate.
But I will speculate first on the lands. I want to have at least 300 or 400 of each of those lands before making one solid deck with it, like I did with Tireless Tribe. Right now I have around 300 tribes, and the deck is solid. So from now on, I just need to wait the deck become popular to cash out. I want to do the same thing with the Storm. That was a really, really good idea Caleb had. He just resurrected the Storm. Very nice to see other players think outside the box. The other angle about this deck is whether the Storm is very good against the aggro decks. It buys you time to make the combo in the late game. So it's actually a card that is useful even if you are not making the combo. And maybe a shell with more of those lands is a good way to go.
I know that there's going to be some people out there that, they want to know more about Tribe, right? They want to know more about the deck that you're having success with. I think that this is a great time for you to talk about Tribe just for a little bit.
Well, I started with Tribe with a list close to what Helutech played some months before Gush got banned. So the list used only Tireless Tribe of Creature main deck, Gush, and some other things. My first take on Tribe was exactly the same list. The cards banned, I changed it for Whiteout and Peak and some other cards that I use right now, but didn't use any deep analysis or other cards. I think I was using 4 Augur of Bolas and 4 Tireless Tribe, as he did at the time. I started with that same list. After some plays, I saw I was losing to aggro decks, so I changed Augur for Seeker. It made the list a bit better. Right after, I tried Prismatic Strands, and the deck wasn't quite right yet. Stompy still was a problem, and it was very popular 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So in a league, 2 or 3 of the matches were Stompy. I just started to use more Prismatic Strands and 1 or 2 deep analysis. Deep analysis was one idea from Carves, and it paid off. And the first list I did 5-0, used 2 deep analysis, 1 or 2 Prismatic Strands, and some other cards. But I still was having trouble against Jeskai, and sometimes I didn't had the combo, and no matter how many cantrips I played, I couldn't assemble the combo. This made me use the transmute spells. I tried two of each, two these spells and two Muddle the Mixture. And that is basically the list. I did top 4 and top 8 is a very nice list. But I also tried a list with Muldrifter, Ephemerate, and Tachmus. That's a very nice list, but we had many Trons in the leagues by the time, and Tachmus and Muldrifters are slow against Tron. You need to kill fast in order to guarantee the victory. The deck with Muldrifter and Ephemerate uses less cantrips, and there's no room for circular logic. It makes the life a bit harder against Tron, so I didn't develop the list very well. Right now I think maybe this list is a better list for this field. This is not a list I came out from nothing. Birdman actually played a very similar list back in the days, and he was very successful with it. Of course, he didn't use the Muldrifter Ephemerate combo, which I think is a very good combo to play with. Maybe there's a way this list can go to use some of the Jeskai spells and creatures to control the game and make the combo more reliable. It's a list I will come back to in the future. Right now I am reshaping the tribe, the traditional tribe. I made top 8 and top 4. I will probably cut one Muddle the Mixture for one Apostle's Blessing in order to have one solution to Seal of Fire main deck. And besides the Prismatic Strands and an answer that you can search with the other tutors of the deck. The deck is pretty reliable, and if you use the right cards, you can shape the deck to beat pretty much any deck in the format. The version with Muldrifter and Ephemerate is very good against mono blacks and mid-range decks, because you draw so many cards that you don't have to rely on the combo to win. Maybe if the field becomes a bit slower and Tron get rotated out of the main decks, might actually be a good idea. Muldrifters and Ephemerates makes whiteout a bit less unnecessary in the list.
Now, we talked a little bit this already, you and I, but I know you have some opinions about deck naming, specifically within the context of what MTG Goldfish has decided to call the Jeskai deck.
Well, that's a tricky subject to abord, but man, that's ridiculous. Imagine that you are a new player going to a format that you don't know well, and you go to Goldfish to look the decks and make sideboard plans, ask our friend how to board in and out against each of those decks. If the deck is named wrong and you have basically the same deck with different names, it makes the life of the new player a nightmare. That is just stupid, because good players will recognize the deck, of course, from the beginning, and will know how to play it. But the new players won't. That is just terrible, and it makes those people's life a bit more miserable, and it's annoying. Why do that? If you want your name in a deck, do another deck, because, man, This is ridiculous. Ridiculous. You are not decking, taking another player effort, and just renaming it, taking the credit for a thing that you didn't done. So it's just a show off, and it's not nice. If you want to be recognized, do a new deck. Many players don't even name their decks because this is ridiculous. I think the name of the deck should come from the first guy that played it. For example, I resurrected Tribe. I didn't rename it because it's Tribe. It's the same deck, it's the same strategy. Why rename it? This is ridiculous. If you have a deck that uses a completely different strategy, that's good. For example, a few months ago, I did one top 8 with a Tron list that used Rip Soul and Crusher. I did top 8 with it on a challenge. The deck became popular for a short period of time. Right after it died because we saw Modern Horizons and Astrolabe come into the field. But I did not rename it because that deck was just Tron. And why rename one archetype that already exists? This is ridiculous, guy, and makes the new player's life miserable. And there's no reason for that. One example of that is Jeskai Nuneka. Why the guy put the name of this deck this way? It's just stupid. It is so ridiculous. It's ridiculous. This is just ridiculous. If the guy uses one card of another color, but it's the same deck, why renaming the deck? It's stupid. The other player, for example, that made a new deck and made results with it, Carves, started to use Skyfisher on Boggles, made the Snow Boggles. Carves was the first one to Snow Boggles, and he made the deck, and he didn't name it Boggles, Carves Boggles. That's ridiculous. Is a guy that wants recognition for something he didn't made. And even the guys that makes the deck, the real creators of the decks, didn't name it. They don't need this type of recognition.
Well, I definitely started this podcast to talk with the people who play the most Pauper, and you've revealed that you play full-time. This is your main source of income, so you play some of the most Pauper of anyone in the world. What is your take on this metagame?
Yeah, the format right now is not as enjoyable as it could be. I think Ephemerate and Astrolabe are poison to the format, and they made the format go sideways, and Jeskai is dominating the format. Even if you have a good deck against Jeskai, that deck won't have a very good win rate against the other decks, because either you go Tron or Jeskai, that are basically 50-50, or you go some aggro deck that gets wrecked by the mid-range decks on the format. On this way, the format keeps evolving around Jeskai, Tron, and Stompy, and it makes impossible, for example, to Mono Blue get back on the format. Gurmag was a problem back in the days exactly because of that. The deck had not overall win over 16%. This is the problem. If the deck has good matchups, or at least 50-50 against the rest of the field, why you will play other deck, if that deck is reliable enough to play. I think the biggest problem is Astrolabe, because without Astrolabe, Ephemerate is not that strong. One deck that uses Muldrifter won't have Counterspell on 2 and Ephemerate and Muldrifter on 4 reliably with the mana base. The deck actually runs 4 colors. I have seen some lists with 5 colors. This makes pretty hard for people to put rating against those decks. Lindoso, for example, made a list of Jeskai with edicts, and that's terrible. I don't like when the format go this way. You have to put some limits. Astrolabe just makes everything available for every deck, and the downside on Pauper is not that high, and any deck can use Snowlands. Even Tribe right now have some trouble dealing with Jeskai sometimes because of those cards. And if you take Astrolabe out of this equation, I think this will be more balanced. People don't enjoy playing against decks that are so poisonous. And Tron, for example, it becomes so faster than it was before, and Tron without Astrolabe have mana issues. And with Astrolabe, that is not a problem. All the lands come untapped, and it's not enjoyable. For the new player, this is just terrible. The guy do not enjoy playing against. Even with Tron, that's terrible. I think the format needs a ban to be healthy again. It has very different decks making top 8 on the challenges and MC keys, because there are basically 2 strategies right now. Besides Tribe, of course. I am taking Tribe out of this equation because not many people play the deck, and it still didn't got to the people's heart. But right now, the other decks, you have 2 strategies. You can make card advantage and drown your opponent in responses, make infinite card advantage with Mnemonic Wall and Ephemerate, or Archaeomancer Ephemerate, and that is just terrible. When the guy reaches 5 or 6 manas, the game is pretty much over. Those decks have answers to early problems like goblins. Tron have, for example, Moment's Peace and Weather the Storm. If there were no Astrolabe in the format, the mana would be slower, and he would not have how to deal with this, right? And if you look at the aggros, they basically go under this and try to go under this, but it's not enjoyable. It's not nice. It looks like it is healthy, but it is not. Don't get me wrong, I have many trophies on Tron and Boggles with Astrolabe, but it's sick, man. It's just sick. My Boggles, for example, have 4 colors. 5 colors. I run Fling on red. Imagine you play, let's see, Mono Black control. If you put Astrolabe, you can splash it to basically all colors, having only swamps on board. It's not nice. It's not good. People may like it in the beginning, but in the final, they will suffer to this. We will end up stop playing because of so many Jeskais and Trons in the format. My Tribe is a way I found to try to go out of this road. I don't like this road.
Strong words, but the passion's there. Your love for Pauper is very present in your words, and yeah, I mean that's a strong opinion. I can only hope that the people who would benefit from hearing your words are able to. We do have some weekly segments on the podcast. We have a play of the day and give Slivers a hilarious ability. In the challenge that you recently top aided, what was your play of the day?
The play of the day for me was against Stompy. Stompy and Goblins. Burb said that tribes do not win Stompy or Goblins. Red Deck wins or Burn, let's say. And against Stompy and Goblins, the best play I liked this Sunday was to pass the turn with 1 or 2 Seekers on board, Tribe on board, and tap it out. They just went full in attack, and I blocked both times. I was with 5 and 2 life. Then I blocked, and after the block, I discarded Prismatic Strands and casted it, flashbacked it. That was terrible for both of them. They lost the game right there, on the spot. They lost 2 creatures, and I gained life. They did not dealt any damage to me. On my turn, I just untap, contrip, Seeker attacking another Seeker, and that was just terrible for them, but very enjoyable.
Pretty savage, man. Pretty savage. Now, for me, I did play the challenge as well. I barely cracked the top 32 after losing the last round. I believe I was playing for top 16, but my breakers were pretty bad. I probably would have taken like 18th, so really no difference between a win and a loss. From a technical standpoint, my play of the day would have been going from 3 life to 84 life in the course of just a few turns against my mono-white heroic opponents. I had double ephemerate going, which storms 2 once those rebound, hit my Archaea Mouncers. They get back the ephemerates. Storm's now 4. Getting Screds, getting Preordains, and just looping Weather the Storm every turn for 20-some, 30-some life. But I really feel like my play of the day, as far as what it felt like for me, was just sort of recognizing the shortcomings of the MTGO client. In round 1, I played against Mezzle, and in game 3, I recognized that we were in this really big stack war, right? And I recognized that if he had Dispel as the last card in his hand, that I was just going to click the concede button because the game was over, right? There was no top decking. The game was over if he had Dispel. And he had 1 card in hand, and he had 1 blue mana up. And on the other side of that stack war, I was holding Ephemerate as my last card in hand. I had just cast my other copy of Ephemerate right before that. There's a lot of things on the stack right now, and I've sort of played this to where I'm going for Ephemerates last, trying to force him to use his counterspells in his interactions so that one of the Ephemerates sticks around. But point being, one of us is about to click the concede button, right? And MTGO has some shortcoming in that you're not really allowed to interact with your opponent after the match ends. So I just recognized that, and I opened up the chat window, and I told Mezzle that it is an absolute pleasure to play him, as it is always an absolute pleasure to play Mezzle, and that no matter what happened next, good game, good game, because I wanted that on record. You know what I mean? I want him to know, good game. And unfortunately, it's not like it is in paper where after the game's over, you can say good game and shake their hand. So it was just me recognizing that the MTG client is not perfect. Me, stopping before doing the most important play of that match. And just, let them know that, if this Ephemerate's good game. If it's not good, then good game too.
I will go if Slivers have this creature can't be blocked unless you sing a love song.
I like that one, man. That's That's definitely a sliver's ability that we could find very, very, very easily in like an unglued, unhinged, those types of sets. That's definitely the right flavor for, those types of sets. I think my sliver's ability this week is all slivers need a cup of coffee in the morning, to start their day right. Now, I know there's a lot of grinders in Brazil, right? You guys dominate the leaderboard, league in, league out. You guys are constantly in the mix. Everyone knows Carves plays full time. And you've revealed that, this is your primary source of income. Now, I did a little bit of research on Brazil before having you on this evening, and I found some information that I found interesting. I'm going to try to get this out there in a way that the average American listener is going to understand. So my research shows me that in your guys' currency, the average monthly salary is we'll call it 1760 Brazilian dollars, right? And in our money here in America, that translates to about $440. Now, money, it's relative where you're at. I think the best example that I can give for how this is going to translate is it looks like a gallon of gas costs 16 and a half of your dollars. So that's, we'll call it $4, 10 cents of our currency. And because your guys' average monthly salary is $440, that's almost 1%. So if you work 40 hours a week, 160 hours a month, then when you fill up your tank, you put 12 gallons in? Well, that's 12 hours worth of work. That's a day and a half worth of work. So having said that, I mean, like, what is a win worth? What is winning a league worth in Brazil?
So here the minimum wage is about 1,000 reais. That is around $250. Challenge win is more than a worker earning a minimum wage in a month, so that is a pretty good thing here. A teacher earns about 1,400 reais per month, which is less than a win in a challenge. Also, I don't pay rent anymore, but when I used to pay, my rent was about 500 reais, and that's less than $150. A win, a 5-0 right now pays around 26 tickets and some play points. I believe you earn around 31 tickets worth in between chests and play points. That is around 150 reais, a little bit less, because we sell the tickets for less than the price of the dollar. That makes me win. If I make 150 every day, I earn more than many professionals that have a master's degree, and depending on the area they work, it's not bad right now. And the situation right now makes the dollar very strong, and it's bad for everybody, but for me it's very good because I sell my dollars and live very comfortably. For the average Brazilian, it's terrible right now because 1,000 reais you can't pay rent, buy food, and have a car, for example. That's not possible. The other problem right now is that unemployment in the country is very high. People are accepting to earn very little just to not be unemployed. That's terrible to see the other people suffering because of this crisis, but at least one thing good out of it I have. But I feel really bad to see my colleagues in some really bad situations because of this. It's basically like if I am living in Brazil, but I'm not working in Brazil. For one side is beautiful because I can have a good living, but it's terrible. You look in the streets and see people laying, asking for money because they can't have the minimum to eat, and they can't pay rent or anything like that because of the unemployment. If you are a helpless guy, you obviously will be very happy with it, but that's terrible, man. Right before this interview, I was coming home and a little girl over 13 selling candy to buy food, okay? And you have to look away because you can't help everyone, and that's terrible. Our economy is just in shreds right now. The worst part is see people liking this. I will keep it low because I don't wanna talk about sad things right now. I am trying to avoid to think on this situation since the last year when I saw it coming. But it's terrible, man, and it will get worse, way worse, because we are selling our biggest companies, and after they sell everything, the economy will go downhill, and this is not cool, man. I am happy to be earning money, but I would certainly prefer that to not be this way. It's not a way I like to live. I would trade that in a second, in a heartbeat, to see my country well and people with hope again. Right now, I think it's the death of hope for the country. People here are just in despair, man. It's terrible. Just imagine you lose your job and you can't pay rent or buy food, man. That's terrible. It's terrible.
Certainly not the answer that I was prepared for, but thank you so much, Paulo, for coming on the pod and for broadening our understanding of what being a Pauper player in Brazil is like for yourself, for the other online grinders, as well as just expanding our perspectives on what life in your home country is like. Before you leave, please do take a minute and give us your closing thoughts. Take this time and express yourself as truly, as freely as you can. And again, thank you so very much for taking time out of your day to speak with us here on the Pauper Players podcast. It has truly been a pleasure having you.
Man, it was a pleasure to do this talk. I enjoyed 3 of the best hours I spent this week. I think the main thing is people should have a little more empathy. Not everything is about money or just profit. You have to think about the other peoples around you. It's not nice when you see people starving and over profit, and that is just disgusting thing to see. I enjoy very much playing Pauper. I enjoy playing Magic, but right now it's a very sad moment we see here in Brazil. It's basically the death of democracy, and it's sad to see this happen. And so many people suffer because of greedy politicians and economic guys. It's not nice. I think the lesson we will learn with that is money don't buy everything. Money don't buy happiness, and That is just a problem. The problem of the world is that, right? People should have their goals set on happiness and fulfillment, not just money. That is it, guys. I think people should have fun with what they do to live, and I am happy with Pauper and enjoying the company of you all. And I hope to see you guys on MTGO. Feel free to say hello. I am not unfriendly unless the other guy is not nice. But usually I do like talking and all. So you guys have a good night or day. I hope to see you soon.
And that is episode 2 of the Pauper Players podcast. We touched on some issues that I was not prepared to talk about this week. We touched on some issues that definitely came as a surprise. But I set out to get to the bottom of why the Brazilian players own the Pauper leaderboard. I set out to get to the bottom of why guys like Carves are able to play full-time. I wanted to know what winning a league was worth, and I got more than a bargain for. But Paulo's message certainly should be taken to heart. He and I have spoken a little bit since then. He wanted to mention that millions of Brazilians are unemployed, that thousands live in the streets, and that the country being on fire physically is not the extent of what makes Brazil a hell for him to live in. That the country is on fire in many other ways, economically, spiritually, as well as physically. Be good to one another. Appreciate what you have. And I really hope that what Paulo has shared this week can help bring some perspective into each of our own lives. Thank you.